What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another end of the year Commander Awards video. We've been talking about all the cards, all the brand new cards of 2021, but for this video in particular, we're going to be discussing the best Planeswalker of 2021, going back to Kaldheim all the way up to the most recent set in Crimson Vow. As always, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. It really does help me out. I love interacting with you guys. I love seeing the feedback on the polls for these videos too, and that's what I'm going to be taking into consideration when deciding the best Planeswalker. Back in Kaldheim, we have maybe one of the most creative Planeswalkers ever. We have Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter. Now this commander is all about stealing from your opponents, which ended up synergizing with one of the most popular commanders this year in Prosper Tome Bound. The cards you steal were originally from exile, so if you end up playing them, that will count towards Prosper's trigger, and you end up getting some treasure tokens. We have other unique ones too. We have Tyvar Kell, more of an elf-focused Planeswalker. That was really cool too. Definitely worth mentioning that guy from Kaldheim. And we also got a Kaya the Inexorable, which I've never had a problem with the Kaya Planeswalkers. They just supply consistent utility, nothing that really stands out though. And then Strixhaven gave us some pretty cool ones as well. We got a Flip Planeswalker again in Rowan and Will. I don't know what it is though about Rowan and Will. They never really seem to have a consistent place in Commander. Their previous Battle Bond versions as well. You could play them as Commander options too, and it just doesn't really seem like people are really that interested in the brother-sister duo. And then we have Professor Onyx, another really cool Planeswalker because you have a static ability. These static abilities were introduced with Planeswalkers going back to War of the Spark. And with this static ability, you have a way of benefiting from Spellslinger. Each time you cast an instant or sorcery or copy one, you're draining life from your opponents, you're gaining life. Makes her a strong combo piece too. With the card Fury Storm in particular, if you're able to cast your commander, play this card, you can just keep copying it however many times you want to, and then just end the game. Luca Wayward Bonder is another interesting flip Planeswalker, and you'll notice a trend with Planeswalkers. They're either really popular or really under the radar, or really underwhelming too, because sometimes their reputation is deserved. I don't think Luca's a bad Planeswalker, it just doesn't really seem to do enough to stand out like with Tibalt Cosmic Imposter. We have Kasmina Enigma Sage, the return of Kasmina, same situation here. We get a lot of Planeswalkers. While they might have a solid utility use in a deck, it's not vital to any strategy. It's not like with Professor Onyx, where that could be part of a combo. It's not like with Tibalt, where it specifically synergizes with cards that can benefit off of playing from exile. So I think that's what's holding it back. But then in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, we have another pretty interesting Planeswalker in Lolth Spider Queen. So whenever a creature you control dies, she gets a loyalty counter. Great abilities again. I don't know if this Planeswalker is necessarily vital to a strategy, but I think because of how unique that trigger is, the potential of just continuing to accumulate all of those loyalty counters so you get to use these abilities over and over again, I think that's pretty cool. And that first minus actually helps to enable that trigger. So the more creatures you get off of that ability, the more likely they are to die and replenish those loyalty counters. The alt is weird and rather underwhelming for the format, so it's not necessarily one that I would recommend, but if you're interested in that 0, which is never a bad thing, drawing a card, losing 1 life, and that -3 if you're playing a spider deck. And then we have some rather forgettable Planeswalkers in Zariel, Archduke of Avernus, Mordenkainen. I'm sure for a lot of you, it's not going to take long for you to completely blank on memorizing each one of these Planeswalkers, but I will be considering more Planeswalkers just because there are only so many per set. Does make it a little bit easier to decide on the best Planeswalker of the year when there's only under 30 of them. And Eliwick Tumblestrum is another, I don't want to say meme Planeswalker, but you get some Planeswalkers that just don't really synergize with any strong strategies in the format. So we have one that's again under the radar or incredibly forgettable. We have a similar situation here with Grandmaster of Flowers. I like any kind of card that can synergize with another named card in your deck, and we see that with Planeswalkers from the Planeswalker deck products. But unfortunately with Planeswalkers it just seems rather underwhelming. And then moving on to Modern Horizons 2, got some pretty powerful ones. Dakin Shadow Slayer I think is still underrated. All great abilities, that's how you know you have a solid Planeswalker. Only 3 mana, you have a way to get through your deck, you have a way to exile a creature, and you have a way of bringing a card back from your graveyard. It's a multifaceted card, those are typically the ones that age well. Now, unfortunately for Dakin, doesn't really synergize with any specific strategy. The Planeswalkers that do the best are the ones that can do that, like with Tibalt, ones like Professor Onyx. I still like him though. Then we have Gaedrone Dehada, one that's specific to itself. It doesn't seem like it's going to synergize with other abilities. It introduces its own specific type of counter that doesn't exist anywhere else. So maybe in the future, if we get any kind of support for that, there could be a spike in interest for the card, but so far, a little bit underwhelming. And probably the coolest Planeswalker from that set, Grist, the Hunger Tide. Because you not only get an interesting Planeswalker, but you get a commander option off of it technically being a creature. So legendary Planeswalker, it's a creature, so it's a legendary creature that can be your commander. Really interesting. I don't know if the individual abilities for Grist are that powerful, but again, it's another instance of a Planeswalker with solid utility abilities that you know are going to have some impact on the game, but if you're looking to experiment, this is another really cool one. And then moving on to Midnight Hunt, we have Teferi, who slows the sunset. It seems like every Teferi kind of does something similar blue and white value, either giving you extra card draw, with some powerful ult involving either taking extra turns, or drawing even more cards, or helping you out untap your mana, something like that. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where you can make an entire commander deck just around Teferis. I'm certain people are already gearing up for that. But another big one here, we have Arlen, the Pack's Hope. This is another flip Planeswalker this year, very specific to werewolves, so don't expect it to do much in the polls. Not to say it's a bad one, but there's no flexibility outside of that main benefit with the day-bound, night-bound cards of the werewolf strategy. The big one, though, from the set is probably Wrenn and 7. Land strategies are some of the strongest in the Commander format, so having a Planeswalker that enables that, takes it up a notch, replenishes your hand, replenishes your land base, is going to be a strong one. Because lands are also not just part of a main strategy, but there are a lot of other decks that benefit off of things like fetch lands and being able to play multiple lands per turn. It's not just a landfall thing, and it's not necessarily a land deck strategy exclusive card. We have a solid value green Planeswalker here that is popular across formats, and I think it's popular in Commander too. And then to wrap up the year in Crimson Vow, we have Chandra Dressed to Kill. My feelings for Chandra, they're a little bit complicated. We get some good Chandras and we get some Chandras that are a little bit boring. A ton of Chandras each year, like we get a ton of Lilianas, we get a ton of Jaces, we get a ton of Teferis, a ton of Nissas. There's just no end in sight. But with the 1,000,000th version of Chandra, it just seems to add a little bit more to what you would expect. Nothing blowing you away, nothing going to synergize with a brand new strategy. Again, that tends to win people over more than anything else if it's a Planeswalker that is vital to helping synergize with some brand new strategy that's trending in Commander. We also get another Kaya. We get Kaya Geist Hunter. Very much like the other Kaya, solid utility black and white creature. They all have something to do with tokens, spirit tokens, so you might want to add a little bit more to the same decks that you've already built. That's the funny thing about Planeswalkers that we've already received a ton of. You could almost just build a deck around them exclusively. And then the last Planeswalker to talk about is Sauron the Mirthless. Like with the other Saurons, you have the usual synergy with vampires. Although with this Sauron, it's a good thing that it's not anchored to a vampire strategy. It's just that -2 where you get the vampire token. Like a lot of Planeswalkers too, you also get some way of gaining card advantage in the plus, and with a powerful ult. Deals 13 damage to any target and you gain 13 life. If you could hit anything for 13, you could take an opponent down 13 life and gain 13 life. Most people would take that life swing. So not a bad Planeswalker, just one that I feel like is more intended for the standard format. So let's take a look at the polls here. Let's see what you guys decided for each one of these parts of the first round and of course the final round. So to no surprise, T-Bolt won this poll. Professor Onyx was also a really popular one. T-Bolt just seemed to be the more interesting one, and I guess across formats, a lot more of an impact. Part 2, Lolth Spider Queen seemed to win out against the other Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Planeswalkers and some of the other Strixhaven ones. I'm not gonna lie to you, they weren't super interesting, so this makes sense. Part 3, Grist the Hunger Tide. Really the difference maker is the fact that you have a commander option. It's not that some of these other ones are awful, like Dakin's pretty solid. I just don't think Dakin is introducing a new strategy like Grist is. You can build a whole deck around what Grist is trying to do. And then we have part 4, had to cut it down. We were running out of some options here, but Wrenn and 7 ran away with this one, not even close to being close, 75%. And I forgot to mention Nico Aris from Call Time another forgettable Planeswalker. And then the final part included the Planeswalkers from Crimson Bow. Sauron the Mirthless won that one. It was a little bit close, but wouldn't expect these two to do too well. I don't think any of them really stand out. So let's see what you guys decided in the final round. Drum roll. While it was close, T-Bolt Cosmic Imposter won and is now the best Planeswalker of 2021. Really close there, really close with Renin 7, so very strong honorable mention there. I think though, because of the unique nature of the Planeswalker, T-Bolt was able to win in the end. You have a flip option that could be a commander too, so I think that's worth pointing out. It's not just Grist the Hunger Tide that can be a commander. Renin 7 just seems to add to what was already really strong, which still makes it incredibly popular and powerful, but we still have Renin 6. We still have Lord Windgrace. We have a lot of other really powerful Planeswalkers that interact with graveyards, that interact with landfall strategies. So let me know what you think about this. T-Bolt Cosmic Imposter is the best Planeswalker of 2021. Stay tuned for the end of December because I will be doing one final set of polls before I move on to the official best card of 2021. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all next time.